Those of you who are here for who have not been here yesterday, of course, also welcome to those of you who have been here yesterday. I hope you had a good night, a nice evening in Brussels. Had one or two beers, no more, so you're fresh still today. So today we have a morning session here, and then in the afternoon we go out. The weather is quite fine, a bit chilly. Can we have the next slide, please? Because there I should have the agenda of today. I have it myself, of course, yes. I'm probably the one who is not yet fresh and not yet awakened anymore. Anyway, so for today, we first have the session here with 5 of our cities from REGREEN and CLEARING HOUSE. Then we have the next coffee break. Then our 3 parallel sessions. The one on social and economic values will be in this room, and the one on nature-based education and practitioners' perspectives will be downstairs. At 12, we have the conclusions, and then, well, at 1, but maybe we try to advance a little bit, maybe a bit before 1, you can collect your lunch for takeaway, and then we leave here for the 3 study tours at 1:30. The forest bathing one will be just around the corner in the Parc de Saint-Cantenaire that you probably have seen walking down here. And to Vuren and Woluwe Park, we will go by metro and tram. And we have tickets for all of you who do not have tickets. You can leave your luggage here and come back by 5 o'clock after the excursion. You can come back here to pick up the luggage. But before 6, the luggage should be gone. Otherwise, we have to put it outside, and because we have to empty the room by 6 o'clock. So that's the program for today. Very important, if you're not yet registered for the field trips, please do. You can scan the link there. It's an Eventbrite registration. Well, the numbers of places are very limited because we wanted to have lots of interactions. And so, yeah, please register. That's the most important. And unfortunately, when all the places are gone, you have to go to another field visit. If you have registered already and you cannot or you do not want to go for whatever reasons, that's fine. But I would like to ask you to re-register. You can go back to Eventbrite and re-register. So this way, people who want to go to one of the excursions can go there. So you'll find a bit more information on the registrations on this on the link there or in the booklet. So I do not have to introduce Marianne, I think. Well, or maybe I have, because some people are new in the room. Marianne is the coordinator of REGREEN, our sister project. And well, we have been collaborating quite well together in the last 4 years. And well, this event is the summum of the collaboration, I think. So Marianne and myself will be talking you through the next session, and Marianne will introduce the session.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. And this will be a session on and for the urban living labs and case studies in REGREEN and CLEARING HOUSE, a very central part of the projects. Without them, we wouldn't be where we are today with the knowledge we have. In this session, the partner cities and the urban living labs, we'll ask them to reflect on different types of impacts that our projects have had and what are the added values of participating in such a project. And that will include experience and insights. And we've got a wide range of sizes and scales of cities, from metropolitan areas of Barcelona and Paris to large cities of Krakow and Aarhus and towns like Velika Gorica in Croatia. So that really represents a wide variety of cities in Europe. We'll also discuss the future perspectives of planning, designing, and implementing nature-based solutions after our projects are over, including what processes, insights, tools, and guidelines and cities can recommend to other cities and towns. We heard yesterday, what was it? Paula, about 15,000 cities and towns in Europe. 1,400, yeah, and 20% of the land area of Europe is urban. No, I was talking about how many cities, but that's far more than that, yeah. So, but at least 20% of Europe's land area is urban. So there's a big need for the results and insights and advice from us. So I'd like to invite to the stage from Aarhus Municipality, Signe Iversen. Please come up and have a seat. So you're a geographer and urban planner working a lot on water quality in Aarhus in Denmark. Then I'd like to invite Eugenia Vidal from Metropolitan Area Barcelona. And you're an architect and urban planner. Welcome. Please take a seat. Then I'd like to welcome Gordana Mikulčić-Kranjaja, and I've exercised that name for quite some time. I hope I met the bar. So Gordana is a lawyer and a very central part in the center of NBS development in Velika Gorica. Wherever you like, thank you. Then I'd like to welcome Tomáš Bergier from the Krakow Living Lab and from the Zensimir Foundation. Very warm welcome. And last but not least, Gwendoline Grandin from Paris Region, an urban ecologist and very central to, for instance, developing this book on how to depave and renature in high quality. Great. Thank you very much. I'll just... So, that's a good idea. This is good settled here. So we have about 5 minutes for each city to answer a question or two. And then that will hopefully not take more than half an hour. And then the rest will be open play for everybody in the room and if there are questions online. So I'll start with Aarhus. Signe, what advice do you have for other cities to engage on a journey towards better integrating NBS and co-developing NBS in cities?
Thank you, Marianne. First of all, before I answer the question, I will say that in Aarhus, even though we have worked with nature-based solutions for maybe 15, 20 years or more, we have not found the golden way of doing it. So when I'm advising, it's just some of the tricks and tools that we have found that works for us and that maybe also work for other cities. And I will also say that whenever I speak with a representative from other cities and hear how they work with nature-based solutions, I get really inspired and I'm thinking, okay, we should try that at home. But I will say that some of the things that we have experienced in Aarhus that is really, really important is to be sure that the NBS agenda is put on the top of the politicians' minds. To be sure that the politicians feel that it's an urgency. And how can we help as administrators? How can we help the politicians doing that? In Aarhus, we have worked with helping the politicians creating different kinds of strategies, strategic papers for greening the city, strategic papers for climate adaptations. And we have also started working with implementing specific targets in the strategic papers and in the plans so that we ensure that the politicians are eager to turn back to the targets maybe every year to see how it goes. Are we on the right track and stuff like that. Talking about targets, we could definitely be better at implementing wise and qualitative and measurable targets that the politicians can adopt and feel are their own. But this is I think the main thing for us, that the politicians need to feel that it's important, and also that they have ownership to the agenda, that it's their agenda, it's something they want. And as administrations, we can help the politicians coming to that point. Another thing is the financing things. As you all know, we cannot make any kinds of nature-based solutions, nature projects, parks, anything, if we don't have the finance. And of course, there are lots of different means of financing. There are national funds, private funds, financing from the municipality, which can be really hard to achieve, and lots of other kinds of financing instruments. But what we have experienced in Aarhus, and this is specially coupled to making NBS as a means of reducing the risk from floodings and climate adaptation, is that you have to use your catastrophe. In Denmark, we have this saying about granting incidents. For example, if we have a huge cloudburst, which causes lots of damages, then we have experienced that if the administration is ready to help the politicians creating solutions very fast, then it's not easy, but easier to get the politicians also to grant money for the solutions. So therefore, an advice is to be, if it's possible, be a little bit prepared so that you can tap into the disaster, if you could say so, and then help the politicians finding the solutions, because all politicians are very eager finding solutions when the citizens are complaining about floods, of course. Another thing is to maybe if you can search your administration for other kinds of projects that you can tap into. It could be, for example, road projects, traffic projects, and then do some cooperation with the other departments to be able to create nature-based solutions at the same time as you're creating, for example, highways. We have some examples from Aarhus. We have an old one. We have a low-lying wetland area that has been drained maybe 70 years ago. And then during many years, the administration had wanted to make nature restorations there, but it was not necessary because the landowners, they didn't want to sell the land, so we couldn't. But then suddenly, the National Road Department was going to make a new highway just beside of the area. And then suddenly it became interesting for the landowners to sell their land. They weren't interested in having lands just beside of the highway. So the municipality got the chance to buy the lands, and then coupled with national fundings, it's 15 years ago, coupled with national fundings and a target in the Water Frame Directive, we got the possibility to create a wetland, which is now, we call it Lake Eo, and it's now actually one of the most well-visited recreational areas in Aarhus. And it's also a great spot for biodiversity and other nature-based elements. So this is an example of how you can try to tap into other agendas, other projects, and by that means you can finance nature-based solutions. We have one more example of that. A new road the municipality has been making the last couple of years, which were crossing a small stream, which was in a very poor shape. And then to be able to make the new road in a right way, we had some negotiation with the road department, and by that way we actually got them to finance a restoration of the stream. So I will say if it's possible to navigate and to be agile inside your organization and tap into other agendas, then it maybe not often, but sometimes it's possible to find financing for nature-based solutions, both in larger scales and also smaller scales. And then The last thing I can say that as administration, I think it's important to work with your planning framework. So you have either it's the municipal plan, it could be wastewater plan, it could be your nature plan, it could be whatever plan you are working with. But so you have an adequate planning framework that helps you direct agendas for nature-based solutions into specific areas. A short example of that is that with our last revision of our municipal plan, the politicians adopted what we call a green norm, and it's like a quality scale for when you're a developer and you want to make city development, you want to develop new urban areas, then you are only allowed if you can have a certain amount of points due to the green norm. And the green norm lists different green elements and gives them points or grades due to their green quality. So if you only implement grass in your new city development area, it will not be enough to get enough points. So you have to, the developer has to work with the quality of the green elements. It's based on the biofactor, as I think maybe most of you have heard about. But I will say overall, these are the three things that you can think of working with: the political agenda, making the politicians feel that they have ownership to the green agenda, and then the financing, and finally the planning, where as administrators we often have a great influence because it's the administration who makes the plans, and of course then the politicians adopt them. So these were my words. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Let's go south to Barcelona. Eugenia, you have been working in one specific valley in Barcelona with Clearing House. Can you explain us in very short what is the area and what Clearing House did in the valley, in Llobregat Valley?
Thank you. In our case, I'm here on behalf of an extended team from the metropolitan area of Barcelona administration. And then we had the support as well of a research institution, CREAF. Corina is here today as well. And our living lab focused on the Llobregat River area. Here we have a nice picture, and I think you didn't really get the sense of what this river is about from the picture. It's a river very influenced by human activity, surrounded by major transport infrastructure, supply lines, and so on. Nevertheless, it's a river that has great potential in terms of green and social connectivity and in terms of biodiversity. And it's a key area in our green infrastructure strategy. So AMB has been working together with the related administrations and other stakeholders to recover this area, both from a landscape and from an environmental point of view, always seeking this difficult challenge between ecological values and functions and social use. And it's been a great opportunity being part of the Clearing House project, because it has allowed us to test new approaches, less top-down as an administration, more collaborative, and I think more experimental. Our first objective was to bring organizations and people from the territory to work together to create collaborative, collective knowledge in relation to nature-based solutions, especially those based on trees. This was the first objective. But then we wanted as well to create a network, to create synergies that could contribute to the future planning of the area. And I think we have done a very important first step. We managed to raise awareness. We managed to create some network, some interrelation between different stakeholders because we have a very complex governance in this space. So we start having people who work along the river sitting together and start talking. And we gather, I think, qualitative data and very good collective knowledge about the river area through two main tools, the co-learning workshops and the participatory GIS online platform. And this data and this knowledge, some of them is georeference, and we have started analyzing this data, and I'm sure it's going to be a great contribution to the future planning. But I think one outcome that personally I didn't expect so much, and I think it's great, it's the transformation of the administration itself. It's really a co-learning. First, I didn't get this concept, but I think we have started working more coordinated between different departments. Some reluctancy, I think we were able to overcome, even if there's a lot of work to be done still. And I think my advice would be that NBS implementation is a change of paradigm, and you have to be ready to change yourself as an administration as well. In our case, for example, a very important challenge is management. It requires another kind of management, more adaptive. Maybe it's less intense, but you have to be there all the time and reacting what is happening on the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eugenia. We'll now move further east to Croatia, Velika Gorica. Gordana, what legacy would you say that REGREEN has on your city?
Oh, thank you, Marianne. I have heard someone say yesterday that we should put the things that about NBS and the climate changes into our curriculums in schools. So thanks to the REGREEN project and thanks to Sally, Gertrude, Mara, and Jeppe, we've seen how interested our schools are in learning about climate changes, about learning about NBS. So we have put in our curriculums for this year, and hopefully that will be in all the years after this, to learn about children that are 8th grade, that will be over with the elementary school, to learn about climate changes, to learn about trees and why they're so, why do we need them in our cities. And hopefully those children will learn what they should do and what they shouldn't do to prevail what is going on in our nature around us. That is one of the things that we learned from this project, but we have learned that all the VPs, all the activities that were made through the REGREEN project were connected, let's say like that. And when we got the heat map from Ellen, Julius, and the others that were working on it, I think we already mentioned it, that was the surface temperature of the city of Velika Gorica, when we saw how high the temperature was. And when we heard what children said during the sessions, workshops in the elementary schools, which I mentioned before, they were asked, what do they think? What does the city need? And most of them, okay, they said, yes, we do need more asphalt, how to come to the school. But most of them also said that we need more green areas. We also asked, because of the heat map, we also asked people, what do they think we should do in the city? That was the start of our work on a strategy of green infrastructure. And 70% of citizens that were answering the survey said that we need more green areas and that we need more trees. So all of that together combined led to with the support of our mayor, because without that we wouldn't be able to do that. So I do have to mention him. Anyway, we decided to change our urban plans, and we changed the percentage of natural terrain from 20% to 35%. That should have every new plot that is going to be built. And it doesn't matter, is it going to be a public building or would it be a private building? Each of them has to have 35%, and I forgot yesterday to mention that each of them has to have at least 2 new trees. So I hope that, I know that this is the legacy of the REGREEN project. And since we are working on a strategy and we are really done with the strategy of green infrastructure, hopefully it will be accepted on the next council meeting on this Friday. And that strategy is going to be implemented in all our urban plans. That is the legacy of this project in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordana. So, yeah, it's right. We go to Krakow. Tomasz, you are representing the Sensimir Foundation, an NGO which is working with lots of cities in Poland. And you have been one of the main leading actors in the Krakow case study. So can you just very shortly introduce to us what Clearing House has been doing in Krakow?
Before I will answer or try to answer this question, let me give you a short introduction, because you can ask yourself the question why the representative of the NGO is doing here among the cities. So we are very closely cooperating with the Krakow, with many Polish cities, but especially with the Krakow city, and especially with the ZZM, which is the Polish abbreviation for the Green Space Authority, municipal authority. And as Rick said, we've been trying to help to support Polish city, including the largest Polish city, in innovative, modern NBS management. So we are trying to help the cities to both on the technical part, on the strategical aspects, on the financial aspect, how to build the system of NBS in the cities. And as you know, it's very complex and it's very difficult. And the Krakow is our best partner, the most advanced partner, the most leading city in Poland. So we came here to Clearing House together, and we are trying to implement all, or most at least, products and processes which are taking place in Clearing House. So as you can hear and see yesterday, we were the subject of many models, of many tools. So we are trying to test, to pilot, so to speak, these tools in Krakow. And it's impossible to describe everything, but let me focus on 2 groups, so to speak. So first of all, we decided with the city to focus on the important part of green infrastructure, blue-green infrastructure in Krakow, which is a river parks. It's a quite innovative system of the socio-ecological corridors, which Krakow has been developing for many years along the rivers in Krakow. And somehow, through the project, we were more and more focused on one of the park, the most wide, so to speak, more natural park, Drinka. And this is the subject of our special, so to speak, attention. So we were doing this co-designing, free co-designing workshops there. We are slowly going to the end with the application, My Dynamic Forest, which was presented yesterday. So we are trying to gather information on citizens' perception of this park. So how people use this park, why they like it, why they visit this park, what they don't like. So I think it's quite innovative, even in Krakow, which, as I said, is very advanced. I think it's also, the important element which maybe wasn't taken into account so far. And another project or product which is very important in Krakow, which is not strictly connected to the clearing house, but it wouldn't be possible without clearing house, is the EFUF, which is the European Forum for Urban Forestry, which is was a kind of big event in Krakow. And that's the part of the question, or should I go also to talk about benefits, or?
Yeah, well, I was wondering if you now would say, well, there's one or two, well, let's stick to one item which is really the legacy of Clearing House in Krakow or in Poland, in Polish urban forest management, for instance. What would be the impact of Clearing House in Krakow or Poland?
Let me give a little bit more than one, because I think that it's
No, we only have time for one.
okay. But what I wanted to say that the benefits, legacy or whatever you call it, is multi-level. So I think that first, on the local level, is very important. We are working with Dvinka. We are using Dvinka as a case study, so it's important. So let's skip it. There's a kind of obvious. But if there is only one to mention, I think that the city level is very important, because we've got President who is very active. But the city is not a monolith. There are several departments, silos, so to speak, and very often it's quite difficult. I mean, you don't know, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So I think that with the Clearing House, we are really trying to connect, to build a kind of intersectoral, interdisciplinary, interdepartmental, the difficult word, in Krakow, and include also the other sectors, other departments, like urban planning, like municipal investment, etc. People who are not very familiar with NBS, which are not very familiar with the green ecosystem services, etc. And I think that having such a big international, intercontinental partnership like Clearing House is a very strong leverage point, also to support our colleagues from the to persuade the other players, other partners from the city. I think that's one of the most difficult challenges in Poland, really to build, so to speak, horizontal cooperation without the municipality, within municipality, within the whole city. That's more important. Very briefly, I think the international aspect is very important for city, and also as a chance to show Krakow experience, Krakow achievements on the international market, so to speak, and to the international society community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tomasz. We'll move to Paris region. Gwendolyn, what has been the key impacts of REGREEN?
Many key impacts, in fact, about the REGREEN project, but one of the main impacts is about the work we have done about depaving and renaturing in cities. First of all, I think that the REGREEN project enabled us to get to know colleagues from other departments better, from the Institute of Paris region, because we need their expertise for data, GIS, etc. So by involving them into the project, I think they become more familiar with the concept of NBS and depaving and renaturing. So in a certain way, you know, the REGREEN project has helped to raise awareness in the Institute Paris region. And secondly, there was a real expectation about depaving and renaturing in France. Since 2018, the French government announced the non-Atlantic objective. So a lot of cities want just to know more about how to depave, how to renature the city. And during the REGREEN project, the Paris Region Master Plan was being updated with a view to achieve this non-Atlantic objective, and with a view also to bring more nature into cities. So there was a real expectation about to know more about deep paving and renaturing. And the REGREEN works could have been used to update the new master plan, and it is a quite huge impact, in fact, because all the cities in the Paris region that covers more than 1,200 cities have to take into account this new master plan into their own planning document. And finally, in addition, in November 2022, the Paris region created a new agency, Île-de-France Nature, in order to accelerate deep paving and renaturing in cities. The new agency launched a call for project for cities to help them to deep pave and renature. They use the REGREEN's work to identify the city that are priority for the deep paving and the renaturing regarding the challenge of biodiversity, climate change adaptation, and health and well-being. And to date, 133 projects have been submitted and 53 have been accepted. And finally, the last key impact, it's, I think, in terms of raise the awareness about NBS and deep paving and renaturing. In the Paris Region Institute, we carried a lot of events to present the project and our work. And in 2023, we organized 10 webinars about deep paving and renaturing, 1 training day. We also participate in 21 events organized by our stakeholders to present the project and our results. And we estimated that more than 2,400 people were reached in 2023. So maybe one of the main impact is about the ways of awareness about NBS and deep paving and renaturing.
Thank you very much, Gwendolyn, and thank you everybody for all that inspiring thinking, both of what happens inside the organization, what happens outside, and how to grab the opportunities and how to get politicians on board, and that you, non-politicians, can make such a real impact. That's so inspiring. I'd like to open it up to the floor for questions. There's a question down there. I think there's a mic coming your way, so just hang on a second. If you can say who you are, it's on the second row, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Francesc Baró. I'm professor here at the Free University of Brussels. Thank you for sharing your experiences. My question is, well, I've been involved in NBS projects since already some years. And in most of these projects, there are these co-design processes with cities and stakeholders. But what I found all of this very challenging in this kind of process is how to make this co-design, co-creation more inclusive. So how can we really involve the, let's say, the people who is, in a way, let's say, the more disadvantaged social groups in the city, which are sometimes it's very difficult to engage them in this kind of processes. So let's say a bit going beyond the usual suspects in this kind of processes. So my question is a bit, what is your experience in that respect? How, if you have managed to create this more inclusive co-design processes, or what do you think could be a way, because it's something that I still struggle in my research and when I'm working with NBS implementation. So yeah, that's my question.
Thank you very much. Anybody takers? Yeah.
That's very good issue, very strong challenge. And the strong part of our activity as the St. Jimmy Foundation is to build a kind of participatory processes. And I very often stress the fact that trees are very attractive I mean, it's the easiest when you talk with the urban forest. It is in Poland. People are really protesting against cutting. People are really attached mentally, sometimes physically, to trees. So I think that's quite low hanging fruit. And it's much easier. I was working with, I don't know, wastewater or other much less attractive issues. But to answer your question very, very briefly, I think the key, so you've got people, I mean, they are ready to participate. But the key point, which is quite difficult in Poland, is to give them the clear promise what's going to happen with the result of their work, if you know what I mean. And if you do it, and if you follow, in a sense that they will co-design something, and you, after that, you use their work as much as possible, because sometimes it's difficult, but again, you need to communicate why you didn't do some parts, they will be with you. And the bad thing, which happens very often in Poland, that you are doing the whole design process, social, participatory process, and then as the city, you do your thing. You know what I mean? You are losing people. They will not come. They will not use your time. So on one hand, I think it's quite easy. It's easy to to get people. On the other hand, you need to, maybe it's a kind of basic thing, but very often in Poland, it's that that for many reasons you are doing a little bit or quite different investment. Sometimes for real reason, but you need to communicate. You need to treat your partners quite seriously, social stakeholders, sorry for the word, seriously. That's mine kind of impression. Thank you.
I would like to add something too, since when you're working in a municipality, you have to give something to the citizens. You have to show them, and you have to educate them. Not only us, but them too. We started education with first with energy efficiency, and we started educating with citizens in all our settlements, in the whole city, but especially in kindergarten and in the elementary school. When we did this in REGREEN, we also did the education in the elementary school, but we also plan to educate citizens in during this and the next year about nature-based solutions, about climate changes. What we have learned is without education, we can't go further. But we do need to hear their voice and to hear what they have to say and what do they think. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to change the urban plan. We wouldn't be able to go further. And now that we did that, every new project that we will make, and that we already did some of the documents, each of them for every next park will be using the NBS solutions. But mostly thanks to the citizens that really said their opinion during the survey we made. Thank you.
Just a short comment. It's really a big challenge. You have to plan ahead. You have to put more effort. You have to have communication strategy to try to address these people that usually don't participate. You usually get people that are very much in favor or very much against, but in our case, there was all this COVID pandemic situation that make it really difficult, although we wanted to do this reach out process. And we had to adapt the way that we designed the workshops. We did a first mapping of actors. We were adjusting them. We were trying to reaching out, but I feel that it's still a big challenge with the question you posed. Yes.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think this is something to be worked on still further.
More questions?
Good morning. Richard Hardiman from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. It's actually a similar question. And the two words that come across my mind is mainstreaming and cross-cutting. And what Sinja was saying, and Thomas, that, you know, how do you bring NBS into projects? And Thomas was saying, well, it's a relatively new concept. It's still an outsider in the periphery. How do we bring it into the center? And I remember in the old days of the European Commission when writing proposals, and it was obligatory, regarding whether you're designing a project for a dam, climate change, education, to put in, for instance, gender mainstreaming. How are you addressing gender equality? Or environment. And so I'm thinking the same thing here, that when you have municipalities making project proposals, that it becomes obligatory to look at, you know, NBS and have it included in a proposal. Now, I mean, it's easier said than done, and I think our friend from Barcelona was saying the same, how do you do it? And I think we need a process of education or training programs on mainstreaming or cross-cutting issues regarding project proposals, whether it be building a new road or a drainage system or whatever, and how do you introduce it? I don't know how you consider this proposal, whether it be of interest, whether it's of importance.
Thank you very much, Richard. So about mainstreaming NBS in all things the municipalities do, would that be an...
I don't have an answer, but I have some reflections. You're talking about mainstreaming. What we are like meeting. To cover our other welfare areas, which is a good thing. The economic models they use for calculating their benefit does not include anything at all about the benefits from the nature. So I think if we really needed to, I mean, you were talking about NBSs maybe in proposals as far as I understood, but I think that we need a great work in integrating the nature benefits in the economic models in the core of the organization, so to say. And we don't have that in Aarhus municipality. I don't know if everyone, every other has it, but we need it.
Thank you very much. That's a very important part of actually integrating the externalities of developing and getting the opportunity costs in that calculation. Gwendolyn?
How about what is NBS, because sometimes they just know the term of NBS, but not really the concept, what there is behind the concept about biodiversity, climate adaptation. And we organized some training station in Aarhus and Velika Gorica about NBS. And the feedback from the participants was there is a really need to train about it for a better understanding about what it is, but also just to share a common language about NBS. And to convince also about the benefits of NBS and to build a team and constitute a team to improve implementation of NBS project.
Thank you very much. Very short, because we got one last question from Lisa.
Yeah. I have only one sentence. If you put the NBS into your urban plans, then it's obligatory. And that is what we are going to do after this strategy is accepted.
That's great. It's nice to hear these positive notes. Question from Lisa.
Yes, thank you. Liisa Tyrväinen, a professor, Natural Resources Institute, Finland. Thank you, very interesting discussion. My question is also about mainstreaming. Maybe we talk a little bit more about that. I wonder, what do you see, who should buy in a city organization, who should buy the idea of bringing nature-based solutions in? Is it city planning? Is it infrastructure sector, or Green Space Department doesn't have always so much influence to impact the big planning topics and so on. And the vocabulary seems to be a little bit different also. Some people say that we should talk about infrastructure instead of these nature-based solutions, because that's where you usually invest. And this is an investment for benefit, for future benefit, nature-based solutions. And then the politicians, the policymakers, should we address them? Should we, the research address them directly, or usually the information and the suggestions goes through the authorities, the city planners, authorities for decision making? How do you see this, how the information should be delivered for different actors in this area?
Yes, Gardana, you want to please take it?
Well, I think we started from the bottom down, from the bottom up. And when you have, when you ask citizens and when they tell you that they want more of the green areas, they want more parks, they want more, after you teach them what is NBS, if they say that they are interested, that they want that, you've done everything. What it needs to be done. If they said they want it, then you have to put into your urban plans, your spatial plans, and the municipality will adopt that because the citizens asked for that.
That sounds like a very easy approach. That's really nice. Thank you. Tomasz?
I really appreciated the question of Lisa, because I think it's very complex. Probably also different in different cities or different countries. My short answer will be everybody in the city, which is of course utopia. But working with different cities in Poland, the most successful story I know is the medium-sized city or town, and they created the super team. If you know what I mean. It's not in the structure. Because if you are in the structure, you always touch only the part of the bigger picture. So they created, just beyond the mayor, the nature-based solution team, so to speak. And they are revising all documents. And very often, city is building the road, and the team responsible for the road, they have no idea about NBS. Or they have their own regulations. They have no time, no space. So city is talking about nature-based solution, and they're building the road, which is completely, you know what I mean, sealed, without water retention, without climate naturality mitigation, etc. So we need to preach, we need to do what we practice, what we preach, and having this kind of, whatever we called it, I don't know the English good name, but the super team, they take care to spread nature-based solution in all documents and practice, even without calling it nature-based solution, because in Polish it doesn't work at all. We are rather talking about blue-green infrastructure, but nature-based solution sounds in Polish a little bit strange. So, but I think this is just the vocabulary, but you know, the action is very important. So this kind of super team is very important. And what's also very powerful, especially in Poland on our stage, is to do the pilots, the good examples as the city, to build something which is even better, average, more than you expect from the private investor. You are trying to build in the school, in the center, education center, city building, the very complex nature-based solution system, so to speak. So I think that there are two practices, so to speak, which are useful and efficient in Poland. Thank you.
I would like to add something else. when you, okay, what we also learned from this REGREEN project was that you are also talking about the PM 2.5 particulars and about pollution, air pollution. But we were also working on energy efficiency, on energy transition, which you have to combine. If you combine energy transition with the nature transition, with the green transition, then it's easier to talk about the green transition because they are both connected and you can't talk about one without the other one. And it's easier for everyone to understand that both of them will get better air quality and you will have a more less air pollution. So you have to combine both of them together. And it will be easier for all the people to understand what are you talking about.
Thank you very much. Is there one last comment from Aarhus, Paris, or Barcelona? No, nothing from the online. We're entering our coffee break, but I'd like to thank you very much from Poland, Croatia, Denmark, France, and Spain. So it's really about changing organizations, changing how you work, the regulations, what goes in, the education and training, the ways into the political level to really get impacts gone. And then last but not least, really get the good examples out there in practice. So thank you very much, everybody, also for your questions. We will have half an hour coffee break. At 10:30, we'll go for the parallel sessions. You see them here, social and economic values of nature-based solutions in this main room, on education opportunities, pedagogies, and challenges in the white room downstairs, and practitioners' perspectives working with nature-based solutions in the red room. And then we meet here again for the conference conclusions at 12 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, experts of nature-based solutions, I guess it's time to start our next session, and we'll be talking about social and economic values of nature-based solutions and restoration. My name is Liisa Tyrväinen. I work as a professor in Natural Resources Institute Finland in Helsinki, and Himanshu Mishra is with me in the back taking care of the notes and following the online discussion. And we both have worked with the Clearing House project. And our session is divided in two parts. First, we will have 4 quite short presentations to give you a little bit more insight what kind of topics have been researched in this thematic area in Clearing House and Clearing House and REGREEN projects. And after that, we will have a panel discussion, and I invite then audience to participate, and there might not be time for questions directly after the presentations, but then we welcome you to, you know, ask questions and contribute to the discussion. And yes, the panelists will be the speakers. So I will invite I have a pleasure to invite the first speaker, Dr. Joe Garrett, who is a research fellow working at the European Centre for Environment and Human Health in Exeter, University Exeter in the UK. And Joe describes his domain. She's a human geographer utilizing quantitative and GIS approaches in her work. You're very welcome, Joe.
Hi everyone, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, and today I'm talking about valuing the reduced risk from mortality by heat from public green spaces in Paris. So in the future, we're expecting heat waves that happen more often, that last longer, and with higher maximum temperatures. And this is expected to correspond to an increase in heat-related illnesses and mortality. This will be exacerbated by increased urbanization due to the urban heat island effect and an aging population who are more vulnerable to heat-related morbidity and mortality. However, as we know, parks and green spaces are cooler than their surrounding areas, and this cooling extends beyond their boundaries to the nearby areas. And this represents a potential nature-based solution for adapting to and mitigating increased urban heat. So we wanted to explore this effect and understand the current health benefits from green spaces in terms of their reduced risk to mortality, and calculate the associated economic value. And our case study site was Paris. France was particularly affected during the 2003 European heat wave, with nearly 15,000 excess deaths estimated, of which 2,000 were in Paris. Our REGREEN colleague, Neil Bird from Austria, he provided high spatial resolution temperature maps for Paris for 2019. And he calculated average daily air temperature in squares of 30 by 30 meters for Paris. And we could then overlay this with a data set of public green spaces in Paris so that we could calculate their cooling effect. So we started with a data set of nearly 2,000 green spaces, and these were at least 1,000 meters squared for our analysis purposes. We then took a subset of these that were also at least 100 meters from other green spaces or water bodies. For these then, we could then calculate the cooling distance. So that's the distance beyond which we could no longer detect cooling from our green spaces. So this figure shows the example from one green space. So on the x-axis, we have the distance from the boundary of the green space from 0 meters to nearly 600 meters. And on the y-axis, we have the average temperature within rings of 30 meters apart going away from the green space. So as you go away from the green space until about 200 meters, you can see that the temperature increases. Or thinking about this another way, moving towards the green space from that distance, the temperature cools. Beyond 200 meters, the temperature cools again a little bit. That's possibly due to other green spaces nearby. So we use this peak to identify the maximum cooling distance. And that's the distance, again, beyond which we can no longer detect cooling effect from our green space. So we then calculate the temperature difference between the green space boundary and this maximum cooling distance. We did this for a subset of 3 days with a range of temperatures during a heat wave in July 2019. We then carried out statistical modeling, exploring the effect of the green space size and the vegetation greenness on the cooling effects described. So this figure shows the results of that statistical modeling then, with on the x-axis, we have the green space area from 1,000 meters squared, that's our minimum, to 1 million meters squared. And on the y-axis, we have the temperature difference between the green space boundary and our maximum cooling distance. And that's from 0 degrees to nearly 2 degrees. Each point then represents a single green space on each of the days that we analyzed. And the line represents the relationship between size and our temperature difference. So as the green spaces increased in size, then we can see that their effect on the temperature also increased. And the median temperature difference was 0.2 degrees, and the maximum was nearly 2 degrees. So we could then take these relationships that predict the cooling effect by size and greenness, and then use these to predict the cooling effect for all public green spaces larger than 1,000 meters squared for all hot days in Paris in 2019. And to carry out the valuation then, we need to know how many people are affected, so how many people live within the maximum cooling distances for each green space, and what temperature are they exposed to, and the corresponding relative risk of mortality. So this plot shows the temperature from -5 degrees to 30 degrees, and on the y-axis, the associated relative risk of mortality. And this was taken from a paper published by Pascal et al. In 2018, where they calculated the relative risk of mortality associated with temperatures for a range of cities in France. So you can see on the left-hand side of the plot, there's a slight increase in relative risk associated with cooler temperatures. But on the right-hand side, as the temperature increases beyond around 21 degrees, then there's a rapid increase in the relative risk of mortality, up until around 2.5 times more likely at 30 degrees. Then to calculate the life saved, we then compare the relative risk of mortality at our observed cooled temperatures, and we compare that with temperatures as if there was no green space there, as if there was no green space cooling, to calculate the life saved. And then we value those using the value of a statistical life. So this presents the results. So for each green space presented, we have the total value for all hot days in Paris in 2019, where yellow is the maximum value in our categorization of at least 50,000 euros. Some spaces had no value. That could be because either they had no people living within their maximum cooling distance, or because we did not detect a cooling effect. So in general, as the green spaces increased in size, as we've discussed, they cooled a large area, had a greater effect on temperature and associated relative risk on mortality. And this means that they also had an increased value. However, smaller spaces could have a higher value per unit area, and this tended to be highest for spaces in the range 5,000 to 10,000 meters squared. So to sum up, we estimated that a total of 21.5 people were saved in Paris in 2019 due to the public green spaces, and 50% of the population within the 4 central departments of Paris were found to be living within the maximum cooling distances of green spaces and therefore benefiting from their cooling effect. So to sum up, larger spaces cooled a greater area, had a greater effect on mortality and therefore had a higher value. However, smaller spaces could have a higher value per unit area. So thank you, that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Joe, of sharing this work you've done in Paris. And this kind of economic values of the benefits are very much called for, and it's great to see that this kind of work is ongoing. But also we saw that it's quite complicated to get all the parameters and the background information ready for this kind of evaluation. But Joe has been working with the REGREEN project, and we have another next speaker is also from REGREEN project, James Fulham from the same institute, same university. And James says he's worked across a range of health services, research positions, and focusing on developing these complex interventions. So the next few minutes are yours, James. You're very welcome.
Thanks, Lisa, and morning, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a photo elicitation project that our team conducted as part of REGREEN, which looked at residents' experiences and perceptions of street trees in a mental health context. And just so you understand what photo elicitation is, a lot of you will be familiar with traditional focus groups. And really, it's just a kind of simple idea of inserting photographs and using them to kind of guide or found the conversations in the focus groups. And we use them because photos can elicit a different type of information than just having these purely verbal or textual exchanges. You know, the visual activates different parts of the brain and can really help to bring out some different emotions and different feelings and different memories. And the method we used was we did all of these focus groups online. We originally planned to do them in person and to use kind of slightly different recruitment and talk to different groups, but COVID got in the way of that. So we switched to an online format. We did use simultaneous translation, which you'll be familiar with from using your headsets for the last couple of days, so people were able to speak and hear in their native languages. So we did 2 focus groups in each of the European ULLs, 6 in total, and we have about 10 hours of data and 10 hours of conversation. So I'm only going to kind of give you a quick snapshot of the findings today. But we were also lucky enough to be able to include some urban planners and people involved in management of green spaces in the Paris and Aarhus labs, which added a really interesting dynamic to the conversations we had there. So just to kind of, again, on the method, to see, really understand what we're doing, we gathered photos from our partners in the ULLs from various places around their cities. And we put these up on the screen and share them as a collage or single photos, and really kind of start our conversations by focusing specifically on the photographs and allowing the discussions to evolve from there. So just to give you a few ideas of the kind of themes that came up, this one, seasons and sense of place. This is, you know, consistent with a lot of the literature out there on why people value street trees. And you know, we did expect this, but it's always nice when it's kind of brought up, especially unprompted. These issues around kind of sense of place, and particularly with the seasonality and noticing the seasons, you can quite strongly link that to nature connection and these various pathways around how nature might impact mental health and well-being. Another really interesting theme was around security and sense of safety, and I think this is interesting because it kind of challenges this idea that's sometimes promoted that all trees are good all of the time, and it's a lot more nuanced and a lot more complex than that. And you know, our participants were quite well aware of that, and were able to make comments about how there are often, it's not just the leafy green suburbs where middle-class wealthy people live, where there's street trees. There's street trees in all kinds of places, and it's much more to do with how they're maintained, and you know, how they're planned rather than just their presence. The second quote there, it's you know, it's quite an extreme example. You know, the issues around violence against women and how safe spaces are. But it was discussed quite earnestly, and I think the kind of points that raise about who are the end users. Obviously, everybody is the end users of an NBS like street trees, but you know, it helps you to start to think about who are the groups and the kind of times they're using these spaces and how they're using these spaces. So another theme that was raised quite strongly was this idea of us versus them, and the sense of agency as experienced by residents and citizens. And this came up really strongly. Some of our UK colleagues here today will know all about what's happened in Sheffield in the last number of years, where there was a complete breakdown in trust between the residents and the council over their street tree removal program. Like, it was a absolutely fantastic example of how not to do things. And it wasn't just the breakdown in trust between the residents and the council, but there was also a lot of resident versus resident tension that was created out of this. And we're kind of, it's really, I think, relevant contemporaneously, as we're seeing a lot more protests around the world about street tree removal. But on the flip side, we also have, you know, kind of growing anti-green and anti-environmental justice agendas, and having these conversations is really helpful to kind of try and understand the roots of these and what causes this growing distrust, or this you know, this loss of sense of agency by citizens in cities. So just some kind of quite quick and broad reflections from the project. You know, some of the kind of more interesting, like, single points rather than themes. One of them was that urban residents are not naive to the trade-offs and resource constraints of living in these urban settings. You know, it was said yesterday that 90% of people love trees, and then there's 10% who complain about them. And I think that's true to a large degree, but actually, again, it's much more nuanced than that. You know, but people largely do enjoy having street trees in their neighborhoods and their vicinities and experiencing them. They also have other priorities, and if it's a choice between having clean streets or potentially having somewhere to park your car, having street trees starts to drop down the list fairly quickly. Mismanaged trees and removal and planting programs can have this massive potential to create or damage trust and create tension. That goes back to that previous slide, and that's again, as I said, it's really important at the moment, and we're seeing more and more of that in the UK on both sides, as I mentioned, and that's something we'd really like to drill down more into, because it does seem to have this massive impact on people's well-being, and indeed the well-being and mental health of the city authorities and councils themselves. And finally, this point that came across very clearly in the conversations is that residents value mature stock much more so than new trees. And we as researchers couch it in a very technical language, but the participants that we spoke to, they spoke about all of these ecosystem services, maybe not using this language, but we're fully aware of the kind of exponentially greater effect and impact of having mature trees. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, James, for these interesting points. I guess it's a rather common phenomenon that citizens are fighting for the trees and trying to save the trees, and the big trees are really valuable. And of course, it's very logical because they have higher biodiversity values, aesthetic values. All the functions are mature with these trees. So great, let's talk more about your findings a little bit later on. Then we have a next speaker, Sebastian Scheuer, is a postdoctoral researcher at the Landscape Ecology Lab at Humboldt University in Berlin. And he is working with urban-human environment interactions with broader themes like natural hazard risks or benefits provided by urban green spaces. So please, Sebastian, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you for the introduction. Good morning. I want to briefly introduce how we may consider citizens' trade perceptions as a means to support the governance of urban forests as nature-based solutions. And which one? That one. And I will introduce briefly a citizen science framework that we've elaborated for the project, and then show how we adapted that to several cases. And I want to start off with stating that, well, there is a wealth of evidence on the linkages between qualities of social ecological systems and, for example, human experiences or activities in these systems. And this is what is also expressed by the concept of social ecological traits that shape human affordances and that shape benefits provided by well, green spaces, for example. And when I refer to trait here, then I mean it at a broad level. So as an aggregate or discernible feature of a U of NBS, that may be spatial aspects such as its size, it may be morphology, its composition, it may also relate to institutional or sensory aspects. And some examples, we've seen some already. Trees are said to promote momentary well-being. We know that the restorative effects of green spaces correlate with the share of grass cover or the visible amount of bushes and trees. So this speaks to the compositional aspects. We know that higher degrees of naturalness promote restoration, vitality, or reduce negative moods. And we also know about the importance of soundscape, for example, bird songs or sounds of blue features. There may, however, be quite complex interactions between these traits or trait expressions. Think about the degree of naturalness and preferences or possibly also health issues or conditions at the personal level. And therefore, we may have emerging feedback loops here that shape the compatibility of U of NBS of green spaces for users, for users, or also in regard to the benefits they provide. And some of these interactions are illustrated. Naturalness, species richness, structural diversity is all said to be really good. It promotes restoration, promotes recreation. It's good for biodiversity, but at the personal level, it may actually cause allergenic potential, or it may be perceived as a safety hazard. We know about the social qualities of U of NBS promoting recreation. Think about socialization with friends. but this may cause use conflicts, noise, displacement of nature-seeking functions, which may be undecided. And we have heard a lot about the 330-300 rule yesterday also. So we know about importance of green spaces in near proximity to place of residence, for example. But it has also been reported that there is a certain being away component to green space use. So further distant green spaces may also have important functions. And at the personal level, you may ask, how far is too far? And it's these relationships that we sought to well, explore with our framework. We adopt traits as what we call the research team-related boundary objects. What really means is, depending on the research interest in the cases, we select certain qualities that we want to explore, be it the soundscape, be it aspects of accessibility or barriers, or maybe even vegetational aspects, for example, tree cover. And we also sought to explore, to a certain extent, the perception of these trait expressions as something, for example, positive or negative, as something supporting uses or something that may pose barriers to specific use intentions. And this is adapted in some of our cases. In Krakow and Gelsenkirchen, Tomasz mentioned it earlier, we sought to understand EU of NBS baseline conditions in terms of citizen awareness, appreciation, perception of green spaces. We had a study running in Zagreb with our colleagues from the Croatian Forest Research Institute that sought to understand different cultural ecosystem and service values in different UFNBS types in the city of Zagreb. In Barcelona, we focused more on possible contributions of UFNBS to health and well-being, here specifically tied to certain environmental issues related also to air quality pollution or air quality. And in Leipzig, we adapted it to actually monitor UFNBS health itself. And I will just present some of the findings now at, well, a rough level. This is from Gelsenkirchen. Here you can see we first asked about use intentions, and the functions that were, or the intentions to use green spaces at the top are walking or hiking, actually experiencing nature, dog walking and relaxation. And with respect to these use intentions, we try to elicit expectations. So what would you want to find in the green spaces you visit for this purpose? And we also asked about the positive perceptions of traits in these green spaces. And by comparing these expectations with the perceptions, we may already see certain gaps. You can see at the right that greenery was actually perceived quite positively. So these are green spaces, and that's something that's also seen by the residents. However, when you look at the naturalness, then maybe these places were not as natural as they thought them to be. We asked about negatively perceived traits. Those include mostly vandalism, for example, free roaming dogs, so some potential use conflicts, also lacking facilities. We tried to elicit how people feel impacted with respect to their use, and well, mostly not, it's something good. In Gelsenkirchen, it was also quite special in that they have a certain place attachment, so apparently they visit green spaces quite frequently over long periods of time. So we also asked if these green spaces, the areas they visit, if they perceive a certain change to the better or to the worse for these areas. And mostly it's a good change, but you see people have a lot of ideas what still could be done. We did something similar in Krakow, contrasting use intentions with frequently visited places and why people visit these places, also mapping negatively perceived traits again. So Thomas was mentioning that in the panel earlier. Example from Barcelona. Here we mapped perceived environmental issues such as smell, dust, noise, smoke, dirt, also traffic. And we wanted to find out if there is an impact on health at a personal level or how severe this impact is. So if these issues cause certain health or well-being issues. And what we want to do here is we also elicited perceived amount of greenery and certain traits such as accessibility to green spaces. Here we want to see if we actually find certain associations between these perceived environmental issues, greenery at the local level, and the impacts. Finally, I know this is really small, and there's also not much time. In Leipzig, we focused more on the trees themselves. And the idea here was in the context of the droughts we had there over the last 2 years, at least. This year was not so bad, luckily. How trees are affected by these issues. And we tried to map, for example, crown dedensification, other tree damage traits. We also mapped this with respect to tree genus to see which of these are most impacted. And to conclude, I hope you already got an idea how we may here bring together the perceptions to explore, on the one hand, relationships with users or use intentions, but also how we can identify certain pathways for action, for example, to improve conditions locally or to manage and maintain youth NBS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sebastian, for showing us how we can collect meaningful data for planning and management from citizens. And may we talk a little bit later how you collected this and what kind of tools you have been developing in Clearing House for doing this, but also the different topics what can be studied with these new tools. Thank you for keeping the time so well so far for all speakers. Then we have the last presentation. We have 2 speakers here. Dennis Reutsch works at the moment at the as a sustainability analyst at EcoWorld Lux and is a PhD candidate in Wageningen University, but has been working in the EFI in this clearinghouse project. And the other speaker is Dr. Jiali Jin, who is a research assistant at the Research Institute of Forestry in the Chinese Academy of Forestry in Beijing. And so, please, the floor is yours, Dennis and Jiali.
Set up my time here. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, good to see you all. Yeah, it's nice to be here. I'll also give a presentation about public perceptions of ecosystem services and ecosystem disservices provided by forests and parks in Europe and China. Yeah, so our aim of the study was really to elicit how people perceive the forests where they most frequently go to. The benefits as well as the disbenefits. Sorry? Mic. Yeah. Is this how I switch also? Yes, okay, perfect. Better? Yeah, thanks. So how did we go about data collection and also designing the survey? Well, first of all, I saw, or you saw my name and also Jiali's name there, but it's really a collaborative effort by many researchers, but also drawing on the expertise and experiences of the city officials that brought their expertise into the survey design. So you can see the geographic scope is quite large. In Europe, we covered 33 countries from mostly the European 27, but also the UK, Norway, Russia at the time still, and also Ukraine, as well as Turkey. In China, we focused on 18 provinces, and these are all located in the east, and basically 94% of the Chinese population live there. I think that's it. Maybe one thing that's important to mention is also that we've collected in total around 17,000 responses, around about 10,000 from Europe and 7,000 from China. Now,
in terms of the results, we have this visual. On the left, you can see the data set in its entirety. And I think what sticks out is that the main dominant colors on the top are green and red. And these stand for the regulating and the cultural ecosystem services. So the one with the highest median, that scored the highest and was deemed as most important, is air quality, followed by human health and also aesthetics. So people really liking the beauty of forests and trees. Least important were provisioning ecosystem services. So let's say wild food, people using the forest to pick berries or collect mushrooms, but also timber production and firewood production. When we look at Europe versus China, I think what sticks out is that overall the Europeans love their forests just a tiny bit more, as the median values are just slightly higher compared to China. Because here it's a little bit the opposite. When we look at the general perception of ecosystem disservices, in terms, or when looking at both data sets, we can see that security issues are the dominant one. So meaning that perhaps forests, also parks, could be unsafe places. That's perceived as one of the disbenefits, most dominant one. But also health issues, so wildlife or insect bites, and very typical allergies, of course. And last but not least, also environmental issues, as these, we interpret this as the spread of invasive species, and perhaps this is a bit rooted to the timing of when we conducted the survey. And overall, my last point is that between Europe and China, when you look on the right side, then you can see that the Chinese value these ecosystem disservices higher than the Europeans did. Okay, I give over to Jiali. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thanks, Lisa. So here, I want to follow, thank you. Sorry, I want to follow Dennis' topic. And now I want to show a very interesting figure. We also have a topic about the landscapes. We can find from this figure, all Chinese citizens, they thought maybe the cultivate landscape will be more benefits for the urban environment and also the human beings, and also for the attractive landscape. In China, more people, they prefer the cultivate landscape better. And also in Europe, we can see for the most attractive landscape, it will be quite, quite balanced in different groups. And but in China, we can see it is still very dominated in the cultivate weighted landscape. So here we also have a summary to point out the key findings from our Clearing House project. Firstly, the important of ecosystem surveys lower in China, just as Dennis mentioned before, and also both societies value forest and parks are beautiful place. And what is the perceived as most beautiful diverse, like the sustainability between Europe and China. And next, I want to show figures that we list the similarity and also the difference between China and Europe. Sorry, it is quite small because I just add this slide. So I want to point out the most important things in the red box. Here we can see regarding the perceptions and the ecosystem and the ecosystem dissurveys, the most Chinese public, they focus more on these surveys. That's why recently the Chinese government also mapping these surveys of the urban trees and forest. For example, the pollen and also the fluffy catkins that's made some like negative impacts on the sensitive groups. And every year, especially in the spring, the government will collaborate with the researchers from different academic institutions and also universities to see to map the to develop a like reminder report for this kind of groups. And then we can see we have some very interesting results. For example, the female groups, they focus more, they care more about the mental health. That's the mental health benefits provided by urban forests and trees. And then for those groups that they don't have without the high education, they focus more on the ecosystem surveys. That's how the urban trees and forests can help to reduce the natural disaster or extreme events. And also another very important similarity is that both China and Europe, they think the most important reason they don't go to the urban parks or the urban forest, that's because it is too far away from where they live. So it is quite interesting point, and I think all the results can impact our policy things and also the decision makers. Because in China, for us, the majority group, they mostly have the similar perceptions on their beauty things, on their benefit things. So it is easy for the government to just have very simple top-down decisions for them. But in our Europe side, maybe different groups, they are quite balanced. So we have to rethink if the government need to develop different strategies for the urban forests and trees. Finally, because we are still exploring why the China and Europe has this kind of difference, maybe because the tree canopy in the different province and also different countries and cities, they are different, and they will impact the public's perceptions on the urban trees and the forest, and also the economic value, the economic conditions also will be different. Because in China, we select the most density population cities and the province. For the future update, because we are still running our MAST project in the coming 6 months, we will have more updates based on this project. Thank you. That's all about our presentation.
Thank you very much, Dennis and Giali, of sharing these key findings of this big survey in Europe and China. And yes, different local contexts and cultural situations, of course, affect on the results probably here too. But yes, I think we can start more general discussion on this topic, and I thought I could start with some questions to the speakers of their presentation. I hope you can join in with if you have something you'd like to ask from the presenters. So about this monetary valuation going for economic values that Joe presented. So I wonder, what do you think who are the key decision makers that should know about these results, and how do you plan to communicate them?
Hello? Yes, okay. Thank you, Lisa. So I think one advantage of kind of doing it the way I did is that there are 2 different scales within the results, really. So there's the individual green space scale, and then there's also the total value. So that means that the key decision makers, or the people who might be interested in the results, are both those people around the communities around each individual green space and their
local communities and also the key decision makers and urban planners at the city scale as a whole. What was I going to say? How are we going to communicate? I think, so one advantage is that I do have this single value, which potentially makes it a bit easier to communicate. But then the problem is, how do you communicate the assumptions and what isn't included? And the results are not yet published. So for me as a researcher, that's quite an important part of the process, publishing the paper, but that could take months from now. So how do I manage that? And that would be beyond the lifetime of the project potentially. So how do we ensure the legacy of the project after it's finished? I think makes it a bit challenging. But one thing we are doing within our REGREEN project is trying to integrate the different values. So from the economic values and from things like James's work and also Marianne's work on the deliberative valuation, we're trying to bring the different values together and then enable that to be presented so we get a bit more of a nuanced picture. So I think my approach can give you a single number, which can be helpful in communication, but again, how do we integrate all of these different things? And I don't think I really know yet how best to communicate them, but hopefully we have a route through the ULLs as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think if you have a question, link directly, so please say your name, who you are, and
I was going to ask a question to Joe about the economic valuation method you chose, because obviously you didn't have time to look at that in detail, and why you chose that particular economic way of valuing the health benefits. So I wonder if you can explain a bit more about that.
So using the value of a statistical life.
The financial, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
So we chose to use the value of a statistical life, which means every life is worth the same. So that can be useful in what we're doing in a cross-country project, because we're not valuing anyone different potentially if we looked at Paris and then the other countries in the different countries. Again, it's kind of a straightforward approach for our first attempt at this, but I think we are missing a lot of complexity, for example, due to age of the people living nearby is not taken into account in this. But I think, yeah, the reason why we chose it was that it was a single value that could be applied, and that was the kind of with the data that we had available as well. So we could use the total mortality rate within Paris as a whole and trying to find other bits of data, the mortality rate within age and also where people within different ages live was also quite challenging. So I think it's about using what we had available and taking the best available approach we could think of within a large project.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It's often it's limited what kind of dose response or parameters, how you can show the impact on specific issue that restricts down the approaches you can use. But there's increasing interest in this kind of economic valuation, of course, and I guess this kind of work is now a little bit more coming up, and also in Finland we are starting to look at what kind of tools approaches we can use in measuring mental health benefits or other types of health benefits from urban green areas, a new project in that. But talking about mental health, so I'd like to jump to James and your presentation, and you started a little bit elaborating on, what these results mean and what you can how they can help in understanding this mismatch between the residents' expectations and the actual planning and management of trees. So can you maybe elaborate a little bit more how these results can help, in identifying these key root things, or how do you see how these results can be communicated,
yeah, sure.
later
I
on?
think I'll probably refer to some of the conflict stuff more so than anything. And there's a lot of factors at play in these kind of conflicts between the planners and the citizens, and especially when you have situations like Sheffield or Plymouth in the UK as well quite recently. And it's a number of things. I think, on one side you have mismanagement, but that's really that's not taking the complexity of it into account, and that's painting authorities and councils with a brush that's really not fair. You find that they're also in a very difficult position a lot of the time. I think a good example is from Dublin, where the head of the city council said he'd like to cut down all the trees because the amount of money that it would save them from people suing the council and all the litigiousness. And obviously he was saying that in a tongue-in-cheek way, but it would be cheaper for them to fight the court cases with people that are in favor of trees and don't want trees removed. That would be a lot cheaper than actually meeting all the claims from people that are, falling over, or, their cars are being damaged or whatever. So there's this kind of communication issue, and there's this different valuing of the benefits versus the reality of kind of financial constraints. Sorry, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there. But when it comes to communicating these non-material benefits, such as the emotional value or the historical or cultural value or the social values of street trees or any NBS, I think the approach that we're taking in REGREEN, which Joe touched on, where you integrate all of the different values, because obviously some values do not lend themselves and will never lend themselves to a monetary value. So like we have a work package task that is on integration, and we haven't been able to present this today, but hopefully we'll have that out there within the coming months, and that will show how you can integrate these economic values and these social and non-material values, but put it in a single infographic or on a single page so that it can be interpreted and communicated to decision makers.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience now at this stage to James? I guess the research experience we have in Finland, so that often this experiential information, what we get from people, it's not valued very much in the decision making. So ecological knowledge has much more power in influencing plans, but we've been going the path that we try to bringing the information and then encourage the decision makers to take it seriously and use it. And this is often we have established participatory processes, but maybe the data or the information is not very well taken on board in management and planning, definitely not in planning in urban areas. But then I would like to ask Sebastian, maybe you could tell a little bit more about the tool, how you collected this data in this case studies you showed. So please.
Yeah, thank you. What we did is we of course tried to build on existing work. So we got a really nice PPGIS from colleagues from Finland, My Dynamic Forest, which was asking you to submit GPX tracks actually of your activities and what you did during these activities. And we tried to adapt this to be more in line with the framework that we sort of elaborated, so that we can address different interests in the cases on the one hand, and to make it a bit more accessible, because GPX tracks aren't necessarily what everybody's recording all the time. So what we did is implement an application that uses geolocation of mobile devices, and we are using geofences to delineate areas of interest where we want to collect data. That could be the city level, for example, in Leipzig, or that were specific green spaces in Gelsenkirchen, a single green space in Krakow, the Strawinka River Valley. And then we well, basically build the surveys, testing them locally, and we came to the conclusions that they should be really short, because the overall idea was, when you think about these traits, that they can vary quite considerably spatially also. Like think about a park, it can have a totally different character on the one side and on the other end. So to capture this spatial variability, the idea was to motivate people also to submit their perceptions repeatedly, like here, there, there. And to facilitate that, the idea was to use really short surveys, and well, it's sort of worked out.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if you would assess the level of stage of implementing and taking this kind of citizen science tools on board in European cities. So what's your experience based on clearing house case studies where we are at the moment, and how easy it is to get this type of tools adapted in the practice? Any ideas, or how do you see it based on this work?
Reflecting on the cases in Clearing House, I would say that we have some cases, like Eugenia in the panel previously also mentioned that they have a PPGIS platform even. So I think the larger cities, they do have some infrastructure already set up where they also collect data by themselves. I also know it from Berlin, for example, which have this participation platform where sometimes it's only informatory. So there is this discussion around coming up on topic X, Y, Z. Sometimes it's about collecting comments by residents when it comes, for example, to measurements to regulate traffic or something like that. So it's getting more towards this co-creation process. But when I think about the smaller cities, there may be nothing implemented really, I would say. When I think more about the trees themselves, there are a lot of platforms also in the cases, in many, if not all the cases, where it's about stewardship and, for example, water this tree, plant this tree, adopt this tree, these sort of things. So driven by initiatives, there is a lot of activity, I would say, but a problem where admittedly we as projects also contribute is that it's really a fragmented space, the whole citizen science. There is an app and an app and an app, and we develop yet another app because we propose to develop yet another one, and we have another model. And this is all good because we seek to advance the state of the art, maybe. But this is something that I would say severely hinders adoption, because you cannot re-adopt new models like every 2 years or something like that. I think there is just not the capacity, and the same as with apps for citizen science, for example. And we also got this comment in a workshop in Leipzig, where they see that this work is interesting and potentially relevant for their work, but it's not that they're going to adopt yet another tool. And I think this is something that we also need to consider.
Okay, thank you. I guess these participatory tools have been there quite a while, and for example, Helsinki started participatory planning of green spaces already in 1995, and they've been elaborating that further year by year. But still, there are many cities that do it at the minimum level, or it can be surveys, or it can be access to a survey, PPGIS survey or something like that. But it really, I guess there's things to do. But Marianne, please, you have a question.
It's really inspiring to hear about your tools, because we promised an app too, and we had to abandon it because our partner was not able to develop it to the way we wanted. And it could have actually been, in hindsight, it might have been a good thing to collaborate on. So that example that you have of so many apps, I wonder how many apps actually fail and never reach the bar of actually being implemented. But even when they implement it, what is the wider adoption scale when there are too many and there might be too site specific? So Thank you for that reflection. And I have a question for Dennis Giali and for James. For Dennis and Giali, could you speak some more about what is the reason for the differences? Because I wonder really very much your conclusion that in China, the perception of benefits from urban forest is lower significantly than in Europe, and that disbenefits are significantly higher. What can be the reason? I know you're not finished, but to give some reflections on that, because that appears, is it the way the forests are made that could be the reason for this difference? And to James, what kind of differences in the photo elicitation workshops did you find between the Denmark, France and Croatia? Thank you.
Thank you. It is really a good question because we also try to explore the reasons why we have the difference between China and Europe, especially for the public perceptions on the ecosystem this surface. I think that's because in the past, because yesterday I also introduced the National Forestry City program in China. In the past 3 decades, the government really emphasized the importance of the trees in the cities and also around the cities. And also a lot of researchers and also the universities, they really, collaborate with the citizens to let them understand more about how the trees can provide how many benefits to our human beings, both for the physical and the mental health. But recently, in the past 3 decades, the government already implemented a lot of inner city afforestation and also some peri-urban afforestations in the cities, especially in those provinces with high GDP, because they have more fundings. And usually, the government in these provinces, they have more willingness to see more successful experience from some international cities, also for example, from North American and also Europe cities. And recently, as far as our experience when we collaborate with some local groups in Beijing, they do find they have a lot of green space around their neighborhood, but they also have some concerns about how the benefits can provide by trees because the climate change. So sometimes they found the tree species might not very good for their neighborhood. For example, for some very sensitive groups, they really worry about the pollen and also the fluffy catkins. So they also give some feedback to the government to ask them if they have some suggestions or if they can do some work to reduce this kind of situation. So that's why now in China, a lot of people, they really care about why this ecosystem provided by trees. When we look at the different types of these ecosystems in China and Europe, you can see in China, most people, they really care about I just mentioned the pollen and the catkins, but in Europe cities, they might care more about the falling down of the trees. Maybe they will create some other damage in the cities. So I think that's because in the past 3 decades or 2 decades, the government in China and Europe, they have different strategies in these 2 continents. That's why. Another thing is I also mentioned that we have really big difference between the perceptions on the most attractive landscape and also the most benefit of the landscape. I think that's because another very important point is the traditional culture in China and Europe, because in China, we have a long history about the landscape architecture things. It is more about how they make the gardens more beautiful and to link to some heritage values in China. For example, you can see a lot very impressive landscape in Suzhou and Hangzhou city if you visit that kind of place. I think that's why they think most attractive landscape is more cultivate landscape. Yeah, that's all about our thinking. Yeah, thank you.
Dennis, do you want to say something on Marianne's question?
Yeah, I think Gialli already went into it quite a bit, but yeah, the heritage, but also sort of the familiarity, perhaps that we as citizens have with forests and parks. So I think in total, when we look at the countries that we've covered, we've got some like the Netherlands or Belgium with very low forest coverage, but also perhaps the part that we covered in China, compared to maybe some more forested countries like Russia, Ukraine, also the Scandinavian countries. So, and I think there you also see some differences. For example, at Wageningen, one of the topics now is really what's really been different there is this idea of rewilding. So people seem to be so detached from forest and some nature that they're actually seeking it, and yeah, that there's more also research going into this direction, and sort of perhaps as a it's maybe like a counter effect of living in these highly urbanized environments.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually a really good point. I have a question linked to that. I wonder, there must have been challenges in designing this kind of survey that address really different cultural and biophysical conditions and geographic regions. And when I was looking at the illustration, so this rewilding or the wilderness aspect was maybe quite conservative. There was not really very wild option available as a suggestion. So I wonder, you know, what could you say about the acceptance or the demand of this rewilding and getting more biodiversity in our urban environments based on this survey? You already discussed it a little bit, but it looks like there is it depends on the context, quite big processes on this rewilding and really changing the management. But it seems that the attitudes are also quite stable so far. How do we change attitudes if we need to change the management regimes or create more biodiverse green spaces? So what did you learn about this biodiversity acceptance or demand for more wild green spaces?
Yeah, that's also a good question. I think yeah, and not like, but platforms or also what we had embedded in Clearing House, this co-design process where we brought together societal groups, people, just citizens, also together with foresters, and also policymakers on the local level, and to exactly foster and perhaps accelerate this exchange is very important, because there seems to be at sometimes a misunderstanding or miscommunication between what the other group maybe wants. We shall maybe not forget that increasing biodiversity, having good nature is really, really important. But when we talk about forests, not urban forests, but just forest, then another aspect is also this timber production. So I think when we look at the survey results, of course, we asked society, and it was very low demand, obviously, for these provisioning services like timber production. But when you ask a forester, he'd probably answer differently. So that's why I think, these like platforms, communication, that's really a key aspect that we need to, bring forward and maintain.
Thank you. Do you want to add something, Gianni, or? Yeah, I have one question to you about the, go ahead. Yes, please.
Sorry, I was just going to return to Marianne's question about the differences between the three countries. And I think I should preface it with saying that obviously we're quite small groups, that you can't really make a a very definite comparisons between the three cities are very valid comparisons between the three cities. But I think nonetheless, there was some kind of interesting observations. You know, firstly, you know, we're talking about kind of European cities with fairly mild or moderate and similar climates. So you'd expect maybe much bigger differences if you looked in different regions and places with different climates. But probably the key place where people felt they valued things differently or felt they were valued themselves differently was in relation to how fast the cities were developing or the stage of development at which the cities were at. So certainly, you know, our groups from the inner departments of Paris, they have very strongly established architectural and landscape scenarios, and you know how much they can influence these at this stage, or how much they actually want them changed. You know, they very much value them for their kind of sense of place and historical context, versus somewhere like Velika Gorica or Aarhus, which are developing really fast. And you know, perceptions that this development is often at the expense of nature and biodiversity. So people certainly felt they're maybe a little more disillusioned about the state of the street trees, even when they were being planted as part of development. You know, they were considered to be young, small, and pathetic trees. I don't think a tree can really be pathetic, but when they, you know, compared them to the beautiful tree-lined alleys of the Champs-Élysées, they probably feel that, you know, that these trees will be run over with further development, and you know they're easily taken out of the equation when the next phase of development comes along. So another kind of, I suppose, more interestingly, the different cities were more similar than they were different. You know, when you think about kind of disbenefits or kind of threats to well-being or health that we talked about, really nobody wanted to raise them very strongly. This might be, you know, down to desirability bias as part of a research project, but the only people who were really willing to raise these were the urban planners and the green space managers, who were more than willing and happy to bring up the points about the amount of complaints they get and the kind of the features of those complaints and where they come from. So I think it's a classic thing. If you've talked to different groups, you'll get different answers. And certainly our original plan was to speak to people in person and maybe have a wider variety of kind of socioeconomic experience and different groups within the communities. And we perhaps would have had like more diversity of observations if we had done that. But I think we had, you know, I wouldn't say homogenous groups, but definitely that's kind of the next step, is to talk to those subgroups and subpopulations within the cities. Hope that kind of answers that, Marianne.
Thank you. Thank you, James. I think we have a question behind Eric.
Yeah, I have a question from the online audience, from Marie Curran from Ireland. And I'm not fully sure that I'm really understanding the question, but it's about the policy and the fact that the management of trees in cities is how to say, dispersed between sometimes community groups, councils, private owners, and so on. So she is asking, do we need a strong policy formed from the outset of the project or even before the project is starting, so that policy is brought along from the start and people really understand who will be in control? So I'm not sure who is the best person in the panel to answer this question.
Because she's Irish, I'll answer first.
Thank you.
So, well, I'll relate it actually to something that I read yesterday, which is quite interesting. In the UK, the UK government is proposing that developers actually become responsible for the lifetime of the trees that they plant, because there's massive issues with the moment in new developments, particularly housing developments, that the developers plant trees to meet a quota, that fairly arbitrary quota, but they shove them in the ground and they die within a year or two because they're not the right species or it's not the right soil type. So I think this is an effort by the government to actually attribute some kind of responsibility to the developers. They're developers, money doesn't grow on trees. So how far this actually goes and whether it'll get lobbied out of existence, who knows? But I think it speaks to that question about who takes on the long-term responsibility. And, you know, that, again, you can bring that back to kind of historical and cultural values. And I know if you look at places like New York, they have lots of self-funded, really, or partially private funded community groups that adopt trees in their neighborhoods, and they've been going for decades, you know, way beyond anything that I've been able to see in Ireland or the UK. And, you know, how you develop that cultural or that social sense of responsibility without funding. I don't really know the answer to that, but I think it's really interesting how these things develop.
I was just going to talk about some of our other work on REGREEN that was carried out by our colleague Miriam Alvarado, where she looked at systems thinking and street trees and mental health. So she tried to identify the feedback loops and all the other parts of the system that affect street trees and their mental health benefits. And through that process, it was identified that tree health was really important part in enabling the mental health benefits to be realized. I guess I bring that up just really to say how important it is that management of street trees is planned for and included within policy to enable these benefits to be realized.
So you just want to also let me rethink about some policies in China, because in China it will be more simple, because a lot of policy, they're top-down policies, and then during the different stages of the whole cycle of the implementation of nature-based solution project, the government will encourage or involve different groups to join them. For example, the professional experts on the urban forestry, landscape ecology, urban planner, and some other related background. And then in China, so we also have another model we also mentioned yesterday. It's more about public-private partners. So usually, because the land in China, it is not like a private land. So usually the government, they have the very central land use regulation policies, and they know where you can deploy the more built up area where you can have more green space. For some areas, if the government, they don't have enough funding to implement the nature-based solution project, usually they will they will try to find a polling agency to open a call, and they will encourage all the private companies to bidding for this area. The government will allow the private company to make some development activities here. They can build the new buildings or house in this area, but they have to keep the neighborhood green space or create more trees around this area. So usually, for example, for the estate developers, they want to improve their the housing price there.
Yeah.
So they have to create more friendly environment in this area. So it is also a way for the government to make the more small scale neighborhood more green. So yeah.
Thank you. Great synergies with the environmental objectives and bringing more wide range of ecosystems to the cities. Any other reflections from the audience, please? There's a question there.
Hi, thank you. I'm Mike Hutchins from UK CEH. Main interest is in water quality. And I wondered from the public surveys whether you found any particular conclusions about riparian trees, about trees on riverbanks, for example.
The short answer is no. Well, but maybe to say a bit more, like what we did is, for example, we asked people to locate the forest or park where they most frequently go on a map. But to be fair, it appeared to be more a barrier than really a useful tool to collect good data. So in that sense, yeah, about half the locations were, I don't know, somewhere in Siberia maybe, or in the Arctic, I don't know. It's just not in the place where we expected them. So the data quality was not good. So we were not really moving forward with this. So unfortunately, not really possible to say much about this.
Okay. Maybe we go for the last round or second last round, depending how long are the answers. Because, you know, all this work you've done or we've done in these two projects, they are part of a bigger knowledge base on this area. And I would like to ask what kind of key gaps in knowledge related to this research topic you've been working with, you think what are the really could be the key next steps? There's a lot of to do probably, but what's your ideas, let's say maybe 3 key things you would like to study more in the future? So these, maybe Giali starts.
Thank you. So yes, it is really, I mean, also when I present our result, I also rethink about this point. That's because now we really collected a lot of data, but you know the duration of all these two projects, it is quite short to like explore more further, for example, reasons, or to develop more like useful information based in such a short time. So I think when we conduct the survey here, it is quite difficult to, I mean, to collect the quite uniform data format between China and Europe, especially the geographic information. So it is quite challenging. And then because we, another thing is, I mean, if want to find some really scientific, I say, similarities and difference, we have to based on the same data set. So it is quite hard for us. And in the future, I think, because we found we do have different, we have a lot difference between China and Europe, and we try to explore the reasons. But what I mean, when we find out the reasons, what we can do for our next things about how to impact the policies or decision makers or the governance things and tree management things in our future work, because this is what we are really want to learn from each other. So I think for some really practical experience, for example, in China, we did a lot of forestation projects. So we improved the quality, the quantity of the urban forest in a very short time. So we really want to learn more experience about how to manage the trees from our European cities, how to make the trees have more stable ecosystem to provide benefits to our human beings and also the city environment. But we found, based on our two projects, we found for some experience it is not ready to use outcomes. We have to adapt something based on our own background. So in our next plan, I think we need to do more about how to find out the most strategies regarding the management of the urban trees and the forest between these two continents.
Thank you. Yeah, well, maybe Joe has the mic also. Go ahead, Joe.
Thanks. So when we valued the heat, we did this only in one specific way, so valuing the reduced risk of mortality for the people living nearby. But that doesn't take into account at all the people who are potentially visiting green spaces for respite from heat. So not sure how, but trying to capture that would be an interesting further research question. Also, who is currently benefiting from the cooling effect? So what's the socio-economic and potential inequalities in terms of who is benefiting from the cooling effect of green spaces? And is this evenly distributed throughout the city? Also integrating with other ecosystem services, that's linking with other REGREEN work from our colleagues, particularly at UKCEH, who are carrying out modelling of ecosystem services. And then also, we've talked about the 330-300 scenario, so can we then potentially value the benefits from heat mitigation through that scenario as well?
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Cool. I think I'm certainly not the first person to say this, and I certainly don't have the solution. But at the kind of wider scale, where there's a gap and a need for more work, is the insertion or amalgamation of these non-material ecosystem service benefits with more traditional economic values, and particularly in terms of cost benefit analyses. I know people have attempted it in the past, and it's still relatively crude, even though some of the kind of the ecosystem benefits that have more of a kind of a technical background to them, like the work that Joe's doing, is relatively sophisticated. I think there's a lack of sophistication in how we integrate the non-material benefits. And then I suppose at a personal scale or personal level, I'd like to see the photo elicitation method used for other nature-based solutions as well. And we chose street trees because most urban residents will have experience of them, whether it's their absence or presence. But some of the more kind of novel NBS that people either don't know about or are just kind of starting to come on stream in their cities, I think there'd be some really interesting conversations to be had using photo elicitation as a method.
Thank you. Sebastian?
Well, from my perspective, I would like to add that what we implemented so far, or what we've done in the project, is indeed going towards what I may call a sort of reality check. When we reflect on the literature and we have all those traits reported and the possible benefits, then checking this against the actual perceptions may help to just question all this knowledge and to confirm it, or where we maybe need to expand on it. And that's something that I'd be really interested in doing going forward. But then again, when we think about those perceptions, then they will likely differ between groups. I mean, we've heard about the differences between perceptions of naturalness, or what is preferred between Europe and China. And I know in another project I'm working in, that we have the same issues in Vietnam, for example. So they like it really manicured to a certain extent. And I think it's something. These are aspects that we need to address how do we get this tool to be really inclusive and representative of different groups? That's something that I think needs more exploration, really.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me it'd be interesting. I mean, we already cover Europe and China, but to also perhaps expand the geographical scope. I think what's nice about our survey is that we try to root this in like a classification that's widely adopted, and perhaps to see future work going into North America, also Latin America, Africa, for example, where there's even more pressing issues with climate change adaptation. That could be an interesting aspect to then compare these results. The other thing is, perhaps I pointed towards it a little bit already, is to pin our societal perceptions towards those of perhaps foresters. And then if there's a mismatch, then for me the interesting, important question to answer would be how to balance these different views. And yeah, like that's a little bit perhaps the question for me. Thanks.
Thank you for your views, how we can improve the knowledge base linked on these very complex economic and social aspects linked to nature-based solutions. And I guess we have this mainstream policies, biodiversity and climate mitigation, climate change in cities. So any ways we can plug into these ongoing policies and integrate these social, economic, health values into these policies is something worth doing, and getting more meaningful data from the users, understanding it better, and talking about the same things, that we have the same facts, shared facts for discussion, and illustrating the cases, what we are actually talking about, what kind of management, how it would look like, all these visualization tools. We could probably use them more and in a more flexible way in the future. But to me, this sounded really good. There's good work done, and we are on the right path. So I would like to thank all the speakers from your excellent contribution, and you audience for being here and joining with us today. So thank you very much.
All right, so welcome to the closing plenary of our conference. And over the past 2 days, it has been, I think, an incredible journey filled with many inspiring sessions, insightful discussions, and we could all see that it was evident the collaborative spirit. So to hear a bit more of what we have been discussing over the past 1.5 days, I would like to call on stage Åsa Odesang from the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. Welcome, Åsa, please take a seat. Himanshu Mishra from Look. If you could also come on stage. And Walter Pliego de Angel, I hope I'm pronouncing right, from the City of Mexico. Walter, if you would like also to come on stage, please. Great. So please also, if you would like to come on stage. Right, so thanks a lot. Awesome. Maybe we can start with you. So you have been here for over like the 1.5 days, the past 1.5 days. So what is your reflection of what have been discussed and in the sessions that you were part of them?
Well, first of all, I think it's been a lot of different things that have been talked about, and a lot of inspiring information, a lot of learning. So I've been really, really pleased with this. And the only shame is that you can't be everywhere. So there's a lot of interesting parallel sessions that I think all of us feel that we have missed out on. But I would like to just summarize a little bit of the things that I'm bringing with me. And I've been part of REGREEN. And in REGREEN, I've been coordinating the Urban Living Lab. So it will probably be the perspective of that very much that I'm going to talk as well. And one of the aspects I think is that I have highlighted and also come out during this 1.5 day is the co-learning and how we have learned from each other in the project and probably also during these meetings. And the interaction between the researcher and the different cities that have taken part, the municipalities, the regional agencies, where we have the exchange of ideas, we learn from each other. We have had a lot of examples of different kind of modeling and mapping exercises, a lot of tool development that has been valued and used by the municipalities and regional organization, and also learned about the value and benefits of nature-based solution and the role in education and for a different group of citizens. I also think there's been a lot of learning from each other with regards to the different cities that has been involved, the different municipalities that has been involved in both REGREEN and the Clearing House. where they have learned and picked up ideas and shared ideas with each other. And I think that's also really powerful with these kind of projects, where they get a chance to actually meet and engage with new ideas as well. I think is really learning things. And then there's also been an example of co-learning activities taking place with the citizens and various group of citizens within both projects that I also think is very inspiring to see. Another aspect of picking up is the awareness raising that these two projects have really meant. And it's awareness raising with regards to nature-based solutions for both citizens and different group of citizens. I think both REGREEN and Clearing House had a lot of work with children and the educational side. I also think it was very much highlighted during the panel discussion we had earlier this morning about the awareness raising on the political level that was taking place, and where the cities expressed the power of these kind of project has for raising awareness on topics like nature-based solution and the benefits of being part of an international project for raising this awareness. Another aspect that I think has been interesting is just this collaboration that is also taking place within the different organization and the raising of the awareness of nature-based solution across organization, across departments. And I think we all saw examples or heard examples of that during the panel discussion, of how these kind of projects open up for collaboration between people and departments that maybe not naturally would work together. And I think that's also something that has really had an impact in the cities that has taken part, that suddenly you end up talking with people that you would not normally talk to, and therefore you're bridging and spreading the topic of it. That I think is also powerful for future development. And also this opens up possibilities to co-create and co-produce nature-based solution with different actors. I think Aarhus had the example of how they could work with the road department to actually get nature-based solution to be implemented, where previously it's been quite hard to get that to happen. And finally, I would just like to say one of the things that came out is really how important planning is as a tool for actually on a more strategic level working with nature-based solution. And I think here we could see some good examples of how cities have actually benefited for both the REGREEN and the Clearing House in bringing ideas into new strategic development, new strategic planning documents that I think is very promising for the future of these cities as well, and how they can continue to work with nature-based solution even after the projects have finished. So that was my comments.
Thanks a lot, Osan. I think you're also bringing a bit this perspective that we were working on REGREEN, on how the living labs are collaborating, and then we can also say that today and over the past 2 days here. So before we continue, I would also like to invite on stage Mara Sierra Jimenez. All right, so once Mara is here, maybe we can continue with her. So then I would continue with you, Walter. So how has been this conference for you? Also bringing it a bit from your perspective, and how could it fit also in different contexts beyond Europe?
Thank you very much. Well, I'll try to make some comments on the exchanges that we had with the cities, the Paris region, the city of Belo Horizonte, Mexico City, Brussels, and the other cities that were participating in the table discussions. Trying to summarize what I think it's a set of common challenges among the cities in different parts of the world. And I think that's a sign that at least in this sector, at least in the environmental sector, in the research sector and academic sector, there's an agreement on what we have to be thinking now to the planning of the cities. And one first common element that I would highlight is that even though there's an agreement in these specific sectors, there's a big challenge to translate to get this agreement materialized in other type of sectors, specifically the political sector and the policy maker sector, where it's very difficult to align the political decisions and the political interests with the ecological, technical, scientific decisions. I see our colleague from Helsinki saying yes, that's one of the comments that it has been repeated repeatedly in these discussion tables. And I think part of that we saw in these exchanges between these cities that I had the opportunity to participate in are related to this big challenge. I will like to highlight some points. Part of these big challenges that the cities are facing and are related to shared characteristics and problems are challenges that even though they are identified one way or another, we are not being able to completely overcome yet. For example, land pressure, right? It's a common problem in all the cities in the world. The more developed cities, the less developed cities, and we know that it's a problem, but we don't know what the solution is yet because we haven't been able to align the interest of the economic development, for example, with the ecological necessities, and I think that's one big challenge that we have to take interest in the next years and in the next projects that we are hoping to do together. And the second one is the necessity to increase social and political conscience that allow us to apply the correct technical approach when it comes to decide what interventions are going to be done and in what way in our territories. The third one, it's an interesting one because it has to do with an interesting phenomena related to the challenge of reconvert public spaces already built, but now doing it with a nature-based solution approach instead of using the traditional logic that, for example, measured the level of development in the city based in elements such as the proportion of land paved with concrete and asphalt. One of the similarities and the coincidences between, for example, the Paris region and Mexico City, in my case, that we realized on the discussion tables was that we are both trying to reconvert this type of public spaces into green areas again, right? And that's a political challenge because it has to do with the decision to undo something that it has been done by many years, right? So I think there are some common challenges that we have clear in the technical, in the scientific, in the environmental sector, and that one big challenge that we have ahead is how to convince the political decisioners to be more receptive, sorry, for the implementations of these kind of policies. What could I say about this challenge that we have ahead? In our case, we had the luck that our last governor in Mexico City was a scientist and an environmentalist. And that gave us the opportunity to make a lot of things that hadn't been done in the previous years, but we can't depend on the person who is in charge of the government at some specific moment. So part of what we are trying to do, and I think what many cities here are trying to do, is to combine the social objectives with the economic objectives and the environmental objectives in the same policies, because what we traditionally did was separate the ecological objectives from the social objectives. For example, thinking about guaranteeing basic services for the people. And I think one of the main things that we have to do now, even at a speech level, in the way that we say and transmit and communicate things, is to make very clear that they are not separate things, that the environmental policy is one element of the development policy, that is that we are promoting this kind of nature-based solutions because they help us to get more water, better air quality, more public spaces. For example, in the case of Mexico City, there was a lack of access of public spaces in the peripheria area of the city, as in many cities is happening the same. And one of the things that we introduced in the speech was saying that we were creating green spaces, not only because of that has ecological services, but also because were attending a social demand in some parts of the city that hadn't been attended in the previous years. And that gave us, for example, social support that we didn't have before we implemented that kind of logic. So I will say that to give some time to the next colleagues, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we hope that this event has inspired you on how to engage the politicians and to get some good practices from Europe. So, Mara, what are your key take notes?
So about nature-based education, challenges and pedagogy, we talk a lot about many innovation, many tools actually in European Union and China and many countries. And we talk about all kind of diversity of tools. It's really interesting. For example, for edu work with MOOC and nature-based solutions learning scenarios. It's really interesting the strategy to co-construction with the teachers and the teacher experience. So really interesting about this kind of process of cooperative construction. With Katrina about City of Tree, another really interesting project. And with REGREEN about many tools with technical tools, citizen science tools, floor maps, ebooks. So really interesting, but the big question is, okay, we have a lot of tools in technicals, perspective platforms and outside activities, but how can teacher appropriate these tools? This is the really big questions. And so the second point is really interesting about the needed of feedback for teachers. We can propose new tools, we can give access for new tools, but we need work with teachers about feedback to better understand the real experience with tools, with childs, and the real context, because each school, urban or peri-urban or rural place is really different, and each school had many possibilities. Sometimes the real economic helps, and other they are not possibilities to propose activities. So they are little contrast between the theory, the narrative about pedagogical tools, and the realities in local context. And so I think it's really important to keep this idea in mind, is the reality is really different about beautiful theory concepts sometimes. And the last point I think is really important for municipality and for all people here is teachers are very tired and exhausting when you propose many tools. They are a really good team inside the schools, and the French example is really interesting about that. The school are really dynamic, the teacher team is really dynamic, but there are many topics in the school. Is not only nature, it's social problems, migrant problems, family problems, violence problems. So there are many topics in the schools, and for many teachers, they are really a big interest to promote new activities about nature, nature-based education, outdoor activities, but teachers need helps. So we need here all together. The big question about that is who can help teachers in municipalities. Maybe propose for the future, the challenge, the big challenge is maybe try to build a super team in municipalities. I don't know what is the good level to propose something like that, but teachers need really help the polyvalent team to help with the knowledge, activities, to find money, because it's really complicated for teachers to find money to propose activities, to pay people, come inside the schools. And another aspect really important for teacher is the importance to when external people come inside the school to propose activities. External people are really important because they are discover what is the school, discover the context of the school, but for children it's important to know the other people are interested in the children and the youth people. So it's like a win-win in this kind of process is children and teachers can participate, but they need people come discover what is the school, what is the activities, and what is the context to help. And it's not only the team school we need, sorry, in the school they are the good teams, very active, but for teachers we need another team external to help, and maybe national team. So we have different levels. And the challenge for nature-based solutions maybe is how we can build a new team to help teachers. This is like the big conclusion. We need help teachers.
Great. Yeah. Thanks a lot. So a more holistic approach to support NBS education. And it's good because we already have this super team entering in the NBS education. So not only integrating NBS in the local authorities. So Himanshu, what are your key messages from these days?
Well, it's quite long to tiring days, learning so many different things. It would be difficult in this, as you've been very specific to a particular topic you've been working. For me, the best takeaway here is how socio-ecological components or social aspects of nature-based solutions are taking a front kind of topic or kind of a very important topic in different discourses. And I would like to go back to the day one where one of our speakers here from European Commission was talking about this, making this policy of binding document for NBS, or where certain things comes to my mind. One first point is, how could we see that in terms of eco-social compensation? So for example, now in Finland, we have this eco-social compensation, even though it's a non-binding. We are trying to understand if there is a particular ecosystem loss due to a complementary development in a particular area. How would we compensate that, both socially and ecologically? The usual practice is they build something or they plant some trees far away from the development site, and this is how they tick the box. And this kind of binding documents would probably somehow make it more legitimize this kind of activity. So we need to find out how we could have a balance in that. The second best thing is how to streamline the experiential data that citizen science is producing by various means of developing these tools or surveys, talking to people using photo illustration methods and so on, helping this mental health benefits, putting this particular discussion in the decision making of NBS. How do we do that? So this is one of the challenge that need to be resolved, or we need to take small steps anyway. So yeah, there's so many things to talk about. We can continue maybe further for the moment. So this is something I can.
So many questions to be answered or discussed. That could be many other events. So hopefully we can all take these questions and the key takeaways and further develop them in other projects or in our ongoing project that we are all involved. So I would like really to thank you very much for all your insights and providing a glimpse of what happened also in the parallel discussions that not everyone was able to participate. So I would like to thank you all, and a round of applause for all our speakers. All right, so now we can have also a very quick round of reflections from both Rick and Marianne. So please join me on stage. So what are your key takeaways and the key messages that you're taking from this final event for both projects? Marianne, let's start with you.
Thanks. I'd like to thank everybody for making this such a very special event. We worked hard for 4 years, and it's a pity it's come to an end in an hour, apart from the field trip. But we have, luckily, the recordings, they will be made available, and the presentations and all our output. I've got kind of 4 themes I'd like to touch on. One is what Paola said yesterday. There are 75 NBS projects funded by the European Commission. 650 million euros gone into this since, I think, 17. So there's a lot of evidence, knowledge, and guidelines, and it's growing still. But my question is really how to make sure that this comes out to all cities, and that it's understood in the way that we understand it, be it we researcher, practitioners. So one inspiration I got yesterday talking to a colleague from REGREEN, Zes, Josep Weber, is all the activities going on suddenly in Croatia, in Velika Gorica, that there's a ample opportunity for creating an NBS hub in Croatia. And we talked to Bitsina Vilka, and so they are taking that up. And I think that's generally also the central role of Network Nature, of gathering and synthesizing all this output. But it needs to come out to the different regions and countries. And that leads to that we need to have this translated. The key things, or the synthesis, it needs to be brought to where people are. We can't expect urban planners to go into an EC website or Synodo or an old, almost closed project website to get some obscure deliverable. That's not going to happen. So all these translations into all our languages, I think, is a major gap that needs to be lifted. And we also need to move outside the NBS bubble, and I can hear that is already happening. Like Velika Gorica, you're working already with companies in Aarhus and elsewhere. But this thing of convincing policymakers is also a very strong message coming out of today, and talking to colleagues who don't normally work with NBS and for them to understand it. So that was one thing, how to make all this wealth of information, guidance, and knowledge available and implementable. And then there's the whole thing about policy and agendas from the EU level that is really pushing in the right direction. But how do we ensure that it also translates into connectivity, absolute quality in NBS? Because otherwise you could say, compared to today, it's always a progress. But we don't have time to just do half measures. And that was one thing that Karen Zaunberg also said yesterday. She emphasized so much. We're really in an urgent situation, and that's my third point. This urgency of action is there. We understand it, but do we really understand it? Because we're just tinkering at the margin. We're just scratching the surface. And I think one thing is to invite and inspire people to imagine and envision a complete different connection to nature. And that has to do with empowerment. And I think a place to start is simply to show people what change can look like, that it's done elsewhere. And we've got great examples from China, Latin America, and from Europe, that those examples, when people see that has been done elsewhere, they start thinking naturally, that can be done here. And that's really, really important. So this story building, but showing the real thing. An example are Hamburg. They are putting a lid over motorways going through Hamburg with several hectares apiece being created as parks, and that links neighborhoods and reduces noise and pollution. We see it on top of railway station of Montparnasse in Paris or in Beijing airport. So there are lots of examples out there, or major ring roads inside of a city where they actually take it away and daylight a river and renature it. There are some really, really good examples out there. So that really requires courage, leadership, and policy champions. And there are lots of policy champions in these two projects. And it's wonderful to see. And with that comes the funding. And actually, there's a lot of funding out there. The European Investment Bank really wants to invest in this. Impact investors, that's ample sources of funding out there. There's just this translation over to how to make the projects bankable, the problem of projects needing to be several hundred millions of euro for the European Investment Bank to be interested in this, and there has to be some mechanisms in there. And then my last point is on this nature restoration law that hopefully, is it today, it's being negotiated finally. And what Ben Casper said, this is a key tool to push real action and probably the biggest boost to NBS in urban areas. But we need to be very vigilant also after our project ends to make sure that this satisfactory level of targets is also actually satisfactory and ambitious and is implemented. And so Paula just told me in the break that this is about 800 cities with more than 50,000 people that this is relevant for. We've covered just a handful or two handfuls of cities. That's a lot out there. How do we do that? And so we need this to really engage in this open collaboration that the European Commission will start in order to determine these satisfactory levels. And we need to include both the monetary and non-monetary values in this to make the case for it and not forget the social aspects. So that was the end, and I would like to thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Marianne, for this overview of the 1.5 days. So, Rick, what are your takeaways from this conference?
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Marianne. Yeah, I think I've noted down two main points to start from. That the first one is education, and the second one is cross collaboration. And it was not new for me, but I think it has definitely been confirmed these days. Education, it all starts with. Well, we had a good discussion during the coffee break, Sally. But yeah, what's the aim of education, and why do we are strengthening or focusing on education, and research that was not part of Clearing House or REGREEN, but all the research is really showing that if you really get children connected to nature, they really will be behaving in a nature-friendly way in the future. So these are the decision makers, and so that's one of the reasons why I invested a lot in the education package in Clearing House. But it's not only education of children; it's also education or awareness raising of practitioners and so on. And you mentioned it before, Marianne, this translation of materials, and not only the literal translation into Croatian, Serbian, Latvian, whatever language, but also the translation into the specific context. And this is important also for the EU-China collaboration. I think when we were writing the proposal, we were maybe a bit, what's the word? thinking, well, we will just translate all the outcomes and it's okay, but it's not okay because the situation is so different. So that's something also I think which is one of the points that I've learned. We think we understand each other and it's really a challenge to keep trying to understand each other and learn from each other, but it's not just about translation. Speaking about translation, I've been very happy that we had the translation, the interpreters, so that's also important to have this, and I also would like to thank the interpreters. Anyway, so the second point is the cross-collaboration. I was just in the panel this morning, it was, well, basically, it was Eugenia mentioning it in a way, Gordana from Velika Gorica, Tomasz, and maybe also others, this cross-silo thinking and collaborating between different disciplines and administrations. And I think this is something that we as researchers are really underestimating, the importance of the collaboration and importance of speaking to each other. The way forward, I think the challenge is to keep the processes ongoing, both in the cases as within the different departments and organizations. And yeah, I was very happy that yesterday morning I received email from the portal, EU portal. I'm not always happy when I receive an EU portal email, but this time it was a good news. So we signed an agreement for a new project working on urban greening plans together with DCLE. And I mean, as EFI. So I've been taking lots of notes of outcomes of the two projects that we have to integrate in this new project. So this is really a way to continue or to build the legacy of Clearing House and REGREEN. Maybe a point that is has not really been discussed up to now, but looking towards the EU-China collaboration, when we were in China in September, I was really impressed by the urban field stations they have in, trying to see Jali, she is still here now. I think they have more than 100 field stations in urban forests, older ones, newer ones. And this is really an incredible amount of data which is available. And this would be nice to have this, also this kind of network in Europe. So this is maybe an idea that we can develop further. And finally, you were mentioning the NBS hub in Croatia. So, well, as an outcome of Clearing House, I think the European Forum on Urban Forests that Tomasz was mentioning has been established as a legal entity beginning of this year. And after 25 years of working only as an informal network and a volunteer-based network, there's now a more structure, more legal structure behind the European Forum on Urban Forests, which will also provide a way to keep the legacy of Clearing House alive. And coincidence or not, the next meeting in May will be in Croatia. So maybe let's take this as a deadline for launching the NBS hub. 2 years ago, we were in Belgrade with European Forum on Urban Forestry, and also there we launched the NBS hub in Belgrade. So Sylvia is here also as the local organizer of the European Forum on Urban Forestry. So maybe that's something we still can try to get done together as an outcome of the both projects. So yeah, closing here, also from my side, from the Clearing House partner side, thank you a lot for being here, for organizing. Also for the people online, thank you to be with us. Thanks also to the colleagues behind the screens. We have a couple of colleagues also in Bonn working still at the moment. And as I said, the interpreters, I could never do this job. I have so much admiration for what they are doing. Thank you. Of course, also to all the other colleagues from REGREEN who have been co-organizing this event.
Great, so thank you very much. Thanks a lot, and I would like also to thank you from my side, not only for today, but also for your dedication and all the leadership to implement such successful projects. So thank you very much. And of course, I would like to thank all the session leads and the organizing committee of this conference, because we need to acknowledge the great work that we had in the sessions, the speakers that we had, so insightful discussions going on. All of you, of course, making the time and the effort to travel from all over the world actually to be here. So I think this is great, and I hope you have great takeaways to take with you and to continue the collaboration. So let's keep this momentum and continue working together. So thank you very much, all of you. And now going to the more logistics of, we are still not done. Oh. Technical issues. All right, so we are going now to have lunch at the marketplace area, and then at 1:30 we need to convene so we can continue with the field trips. So please remember which field trip you have chosen to go, and maybe Rick, you would like to say something more about the field trips?
Yeah. First of all, also a word of thanks for the people organizing the field trips. So that's Brussels Environment, who will be taking us to the renatured Woluwe Valley. So it's Etienne, who you have to follow. The second field trip is going to Tervuren. It's part of Clearing House, the working Clearing House. Jorg, and okay, you're there, sorry. And Wolf will take us to Tervuren. One important remark, there was a mistake in the guide. If you want to go on your own, is there somebody who wants to join this field trip to Tervuren and will not join the group from here? No, okay, because the meeting place is wrongly indicated in the document. So if this is the case, you can come to me. And the third field trip is just around the corner over there. It's Katrina. Katrina, where are you? Katrina is not here? Okay. So Katrina will take you to the Parc de Cinquantenaire for a forest bathing inspirational session, I would say so. Important, you please still register, and because for the practicalities we really need for both the Woluwe trip and the Tervuren trip to have small groups. So, well, if we are more people than we can take, we will check your registration. I'm sorry, it's really bureaucratic, but that's the only way to organize it. I have tickets, tram tickets for you, or metro tickets. So, so you don't need to buy any additional tickets anymore. Did I forget something? Jorg, Wolf? No, it's okay. Etienne, did I forget something? No. So we leave 1:30 from here. The three groups. You can leave your luggage here if you want, but return immediately after the trip to Bush Auré, because at 6 o'clock the door will be closed, with or without your luggage being inside. Then. So I think that's it for the field trips. It's a bit chilly outside, and I hope we won't have rain or snow, but yeah, that's something we cannot change.
So I will ring the bell one last time when it is time to form the groups for the field trip, so you know when is that time. At the entrance, maybe let's set a point that we organize the groups at the entrance of the venue, right? All right. So please enjoy your lunch and your field trips, and thank you very much for being here.